esta pena ya dejemos ya.
Hey, thank you, San Antonio. You know, this is really getting to where we're going to make a big change. You know, this is finally addressed nationally, what we've been saying. I've tried to tell you that they there and in the session wouldn't acknowledge that it's psychotropics. We don't have an opioid epidemic, but let you listen to what our president has to say.
Mr. President, is the opioid crisis an emergency, and if so, why haven't you declared it?
The opioid crisis is an emergency, and I'm saying officially right now it is an emergency. It's a national emergency. We're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money on the opioid crisis.
But you need emergency powers to address it.
We're going to draw it up, and we're going to make it a national emergency. It is a serious problem, the likes of which we have never had. You know, when I was growing up, they had the LSD, and they had certain generations of drugs. There's never been anything like what's happened to this country over the last 4 or 5 years. And I have to say this, in all fairness, this is a worldwide problem, not just a United States problem. This is happening worldwide. But this is a national emergency, and we are drawing documents now to so attest.
You know, and that's where we need to really stay on track, call the mayor, tell him we need to address the mental health crisis. The opioids, when we were in Washington with Senator Cory Booker's, the Mercy Act, they had said, and we had identified and tried to take our chronology, opioids are a fraction compared to the amount of psychotropics in the judicial. And Texas Senator John Cornyn authored Senate Bill 2002, Mental Health and Safe Communities. And that's why we need you to call the mayor. Let me let you listen to what he has to say here.
We start as an education effort for our entire community. I think one positive element of what's happened here today is that we're raising the level of attention on what has become a national crisis.
One of the other things that the Joint Opioid Task Force will work on to accomplish making treatment services more accessible and letting people know there is help. Right now, our community leads the state in infant opioid withdrawal and has the third highest per capita rate of overdose deaths in Texas. This epidemic is something we will continue to raise awareness about. Next month, we'll be airing a special program that dives deeper into opioid addiction.
And that being what I'm trying to say, and we're hoping that the mayor looks at what we tried to give to the former mayor there, Poison Ivy. She really didn't turn out to be someone that could help us as far as our community safety issue. And when she invested $50 million, I think I showed you on the last show, and you want to call and ask these people, is this center going to be a partnership to where they're doing the Elizondo Center on Sasamora? Do you continue planning on using psychotropics on children that are recidifying into the, because that's where the report, Council of State Governments Closer to Home report came from. It was the juvenile system showing these children has the highest rate of recidivism going into the adult system. That was 54% of these kids. And all 5 of those cities ended up having the highest rate of homicide. 2016, our chief said he can't put his finger on it. Well, we're going to put our finger on it. And this is the damage that's being done here. And we need to acknowledge this and make sure that we call our representatives and ask them, why are we using psychotropics on children? This is really, really important. I think I brought that to you in my last show, and what the work I did with our veterans when I was doing the Department of Veterans Affairs 2012 suicide report, and 22 veterans were killing themselves, and psychotropics was a factor because they couldn't get their benefits for PTSD, and why we don't get any funding for PTSD. Strong Star and all the rest of them won't accept that liability of what was done by these psychologists. These psychotropics are real, and this damage is real. Let me let you watch this.
Have you been diagnosed with depression and struggle with sadness?
Maybe you're scared of being criticized.
Loss of interest, aches and pain.
Always thinking something terrible.
Ask your doctor about Effexor XR. Ask your doctor about Cymbalta.
Talk to your doctor about Zoloft.
So talk to your healthcare professional.
Get your doctor today.
Your doctor.
Tell your doctor.
Contact your doctor immediately.
Talk with your doctor.
Over 40 years ago, leading psychiatrists met in Puerto Rico to map out their vision of the future.
We see a developing potential for nearly a total control of human emotional status, mental functioning, and will to act.
Their plan? To create by the year 2000 a range of psychiatric drugs regulating every aspect of human behavior.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with depression and put on Paxil.
ADD, and I was prescribed Ritalin.
General anxiety disorder, prescribed Zoloft.
Bipolar disorder, and I take lithium.
PTSD, Zoloft.
I was on Paxil.
When they placed me on Zoloft.
They gave me Adderall.
I was prescribed Siptamu,
Tegretol,
Lexapro, Depakote,
Stelazine,
Adderall,
Concerta,
Thorazine,
Prozac,
Lorazepam,
Effexor,
Clonazepam,
Ritalin,
dexamphetamine,
Paxil,
Cylert,
Prozac,
Adderall,
Elavil,
Depakote, Wellbutrin, Seroquel, etc., etc.
100 million people worldwide are on psychiatric drugs. How did this happen? Psychiatrists convinced them they were sick.
They want you to think you're diseased from birth, and that all those experiences of life, childhood and adolescence and teenage years and adulthood and being a senior citizen, that these are all various stages of disease.
Because let's face it, we've all been depressed at one time. We've all been anxious at one time. These are normal emotions that we feel.
Every emotional and spiritual problem is reduced to a label.
And of course, all of those diseases require pharmaceutical treatments. This is big, big business.
While generating a healthy income, claiming to be medical professionals, psychiatrists will freely confess that their profession is devoid of science.
Well, you don't really have any specific blood tests or other tests that are definitive for any mental illness whatsoever.
It would be neat if it would become much more scientific.
Well, if you go to my office and you tell me that you're depressed, there's nothing, and no blood sample or whatever, no tests.
There are not current available tests to verify your diagnosis.
I don't use any tests.
You do not have a test to say, well, this is this disorder and this is the best medication for this disorder.
For many years we thought we had the tests nailed down, but it turned out that they weren't of any value.
If you don't know what's causing the symptoms, then to give somebody something to alleviate the symptoms is close to impossible.
By the time a drug's approved and it hits the general population, we don't know even 50% of the side effects that are involved with that drug.
And these pills cause heart attacks and liver problems and immune system problems and lots of other medical problems. So you're playing with fire.
Every day, psychotropic drugs cause serious adverse reactions. And while psychiatrists and drug companies fully understand the dangers of the drugs they sell, their unsuspecting customers are left to suffer the consequences.
Everything became worse. Each mood swing was worse.
He would have chronic headaches, chronic, nausea, not feeling good.
She was very agitated, very, very jumpy.
She was having horrible hallucinations.
Her personality was disintegrating.
Once he started on that drug, the cloud just stayed over him and stayed over him and stayed over him. It got darker and darker.
He thought there wasn't anything worth living to kill himself. That was not Matthew. That was the drugs.
At least I would like to have said, I love you. I didn't get a chance to do that.
In addition to crippling scores of people daily, every month, psychiatric drugs kill an estimated 3,000. But the human devastation would never have gotten this high if psychiatrists hadn't worked hand in hand with drug companies to promote their drugs to doctors throughout the world. Today, 70% of all psychiatric drugs are prescribed by general physicians. And how was this accomplished? Marketing.
It's about creating a good story that uses science, that convinces a physician to think about writing a prescription.
This is not science. This is incredibly effective marketing. It has nothing to do with science.
They use what I call statistical contortionism. Basically just skew the numbers, make everything look fantastic, you hide the bad numbers.
They're learning every trick in the book. They're evolving into efficient marketing machines, and it's working.
There's definitely an unholy alliance between psychiatry and pharmaceutical sales. That's a marriage made in heaven.
They're like conjoined twins. They're joined at the wallet.
And with 374 mental disorders filling psychiatry's diagnostic manual, and more on the way, business is booming. Pharmaceutical companies have expanded their roster of psychotropic drugs from 44 in 1966 to 174 today. The top 5 psychotropic drugs combined gross more money than the gross national product of each of over half the countries on Earth. Altogether, the psychiatric industry rakes in $1/3 of $1 trillion a year. How could this have happened? It's a tale of deception that may be difficult to believe, but fatal to ignore.
And you'll see there that this has just got to be our awakening as citizenry, and what we need to do as far as the constitution of our children. You know, I have the Million Parent March there in Washington today, or passed here on the 17th to the 20th. The parents are there wondering why our children are being taken, as to why they've taken my son and put him on these psychotropic drugs, and how, you know, they're getting away with drugging children. But now if they can't get away with this, if the president and the mayor are creating these task force, couldn't we just ask a simple question and say, is it maybe the damages of psychotropics? Because some of the reports and studies I was looking and doing on chemical restraints, it was showing that Prozac's making a rat eat its hands off, similar to what the doctor had told you on my last show. And if you're having 22 men kill themselves, and I mean, even when I had attested, there was 39 murder-suicides in 2013. And these men killed their wives and killed their children. One of the factors of this was they're Christian men, and they're killing children in this conflict, and then they're coming home. As far as not wanting to identify why these guys are withdrawing or going through this traumatizing. When you kill children, it's something you have to ask God to forgive you for. But it's compounded when the wife can't deal with it, and she asks a veteran for a divorce. She doesn't realize that he can't go against God's will a second time. And I talked to a lot of these guys, and he ends up killing his wife, killing his children, killing himself, feeling he's doing God's will. And I try to bring this to Campbell. She oversees the veterans groups here in Texas, and they didn't give us any funding for post-traumatic stress disorder. They just said it's post-traumatic stress, because once you say it's a disorder, once they fall into the judicial, they have to be on the same psychotropics that they're killing themselves with. This is dumbfounding, but this is what's happening as far as keeping our community safe. And that's why I say about the children, as far as the drugging of these kids has to stop. I mean, we cannot not let this continue. This isn't an opioid epidemic. This is psychotropics. Let me let you watch this. And when you see this and understand this, like, I don't know how anybody, as far as, the cities we deserve, we've become a most violent city in America. We're having the highest rate of homicide, 2016. And like I said, all 5 of the cities in this report closer to home had the highest rate of homicide. So it's all identified. You can't keep steering away from this. And we got a ruling, as an advocate and a father, that because of what my son lived through, and I think I showed you, my friend, Mary Jane, that had to fight the Texas Youth Commission when they molested her son and put him on psychotropics. Call these people. I mean, Senator Menendez's number is 210-733-6604. And just ask them, are you guys using psychotropics on children? Is this under the CARE umbrella? Because I've got a report from the governor that said it's our duty to protect Texas children, especially under the CARE umbrella of the state of Texas. And I'm a veteran, and I'm a Native American, and I too suffer, but I'm going to go through this because, I'm not going to continue wanting to not address where this violence is coming from. And to see what's happening around us, it seems like it's getting very pointed now, because this isn't a crisis as to what, like I said, John Cornyn in his bill, when Sheriff Parmelo got up and said her crisis intervention training, and she comes back, and of course, last year we had 4 suicides, I think, in the month of July, 27 days at the Bexar County Jail. And they use psychotropics to make our community safe. You can probably ask, the turtles are being called on these people having a mental health crisis. I don't think it's so much violence. I think it's just a mental health crisis that we're not acknowledging, but now we are. And because of why we are, and what I had put on my last show when I had asked you to please, call the mayor in this town hall, we lost a first responder, and that's where we have to stabilize this today. We're the ESP project, Building America's Future, and it's on YouTube. But in honor of that fallen officer, and this is why I need you to call the mayor, let me let you watch this.
On the morning of April 10th, 2001, I remember waking up in the morning, about 6, my normal time. Didn't really feel very good, didn't feel like I was up to going to school that morning, so I thought I might, sleep in until about third period, which started around 11. So I set my alarm clock for 11 o'clock, and next thing I remember is waking up in the Juvenile Detention Center in Ephrata, Washington. What went through my mind when I first realized where I was, where am I at? What am I doing here? What happened today? What went wrong? They asked me if I knew why I was there, and I had no idea. I asked them what had happened, and they told me that I had taken a gun to my third period class and held them hostage for a number of minutes.
What bothers me about this whole thing is that now we know that Corey was hallucinating on Paxil just a month after he went on them. Corey is afraid to tell us about the hallucinations and the bad dreams because he thought he was going crazy. This is a Mormon boy who had never smoked or drank, never used illegal drugs, didn't know what a hallucination was from Adam.
The first drug was Ritalin, and that was really, really bad. Because they told my mom that I had ADHD. So they started focusing on me and, forgot about everybody else, and they just looked at me and focused on me. And it makes you feel like you're really, really tired, you don't want to eat.
Between 1995 and 2000, the number of prescriptions of psychotropic drugs of all kinds for kids more than doubled.
The problem with being a child in America today compared to 20 or 30 years ago is that if you are different, if you are agitated, if you are extremely active, you will fall under the gaze of the helping professions, the so-called helping professions.
I don't remember anyone I went to school with being on a mind-altering medication. But now, the number of children on drugs in this country is astronomical.
Jefferson County 911. Yes, I'm a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
Eric Harris was taking the antidepressant Luvox for a full year while he developed all his bizarre and violent fantasies.
And the school is in a panic, and I'm in the library. I've got students down under the tables, kids. Heads under the tables.
I believe that Eric Harris was literally driven crazy, as so many other children have been, while taking this antidepressant drug.
I think the pharmaceutical companies realized a while ago that there were huge profits to be made on playing on parents' fears and also playing on a generation of parents that was looking for the convenient way to raise their children.
ADHD is a means of making paying patients out of normal individuals, and once they are given a prescription and put on medications that are virtually never discontinued, they have lifetime paying patients. That's what's behind the epidemic.
Medication is an answer that can be helpful to some people some of the time.
There needs to be a balance between the interaction of biological treatments and psychological treatments.
I didn't have Brian diagnosed with ADHD until he was in the 5th grade. And that led, of course, to prescriptions. And when those prescriptions didn't work, that led to more prescriptions. And the more prescriptions he got, the more frustrated that we all got. He couldn't get better. He couldn't help himself. He got angry, and the angrier he got, the more violent he got.
Each morning in the United States, between 6 and 7 million children are given a prescription medication before they can go to school. Many of them are taking Ritalin or other amphetamines.
More and more aspects of human behavior, human distress, just general unhappiness is becoming medicalized. It's being made into diseases. This culture has grown in parallel with the growth of the pharmaceuticals industry and its investment in psychotropic drugs, that is, drugs that affect the psyche, the mind, the brain.
By far the majority of psychiatric prescriptions for children are given for attention deficit disorder, ADD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD.
One of the alarming concerns I have both as a parent and as a physician is that there is much misdiagnosis and overprescription of medication, and inappropriate prescription of medication, changing these children's lives forever for the worse.
Why didn't my generation, the baby boomer generation, have this? Why didn't we have thousands of kids committing suicide when I was going to school or you were going to school? Why didn't we have kids walking to schools like this one behind us and shooting up their classmates for no apparent reason?
My son Michael pretty much had a very bad experience in public school, along with my family. He started kindergarten, and I got a lot of phone calls that he was not sitting in his chair. He was not on task, as the teacher said.
As a classroom teacher, you're given a list of 9 categories. If a child demonstrates 6 of these manifestations in these categories, for example, can't sit in his seat, fidgets, jumping out of his chair, doesn't wait his turn, things that are commonly done with youngsters who are energetic. You find 6 out of those 9, and that child can be labeled as ADD, meaning attention deficit, a shortage of, he can't focus his attention.
One of the problems with the diagnosis for ADHD is that it's very subjective. It's basically a list of behaviors.
There's very clearly at least 100 different problems that can look like ADHD. I do believe it exists and it's a genetic disorder, but it's a diagnosis of exclusion. You rule out everything else first before you even consider it. And that's not what we see being done today.
Parenting style is not a cause of ADD and ADHD. There are several causes. One of them we know of is hereditary. For example, if the parents have attention deficit disorder or ADHD or those kinds of symptoms, their children are more likely to experience those symptoms as well.
And, of course, everybody's hearing what his mother had said. This young man came out of the prison system not functional because they had put him on a psychotropic drug. As to when it started, well, I know when it started with my son, and I never gave anybody the authority to take my son's mind with these drugs and what, you had just seen there. And this is now brought to the forefront. And so we need to call and ask and try to help our first responders by creating the stabilization center. I've authored the Eagle Eye Stabilization Center, where our first responders can help these young men coming out of these prisons, not functional. And they're coming out at a horrific rate because, well, you had seen on my last show when this started, they started labeling poor kids special needs. And that's where Ivy Taylor lied to the city and said she initiated what we had did there at Project Males. And go online, Project Males, University of Texas in Austin. And we had worked and went to the Texas Appleseed as far as the school to prison pipeline, which we're paying tax dollars, $641 million for those 1,300 kids. So I'm going to try to free myself up of this because I know now I got reinforcements. You guys are going to call the mayor. And I appreciate your time and your blessings with this. And let me let you listen to some lifting up. Thank you.
Yet I look for the light through the pouring rain. You know that's a game that I hate to lose, and I'm feeling the strain. Ain't it a shame? Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Yeah, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Beginning to think that I'm wasting time. I don't understand the things I do. The world outside looks so unkind. So I'm counting on you to carry me through. Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. And when my mind is free, you know a melody can move me. When I'm feeling blue, the guitar's coming through to soothe me. Thanks for the joy that you've given me. I want you to know I believe in your song, and rhythm and rhyme and harmony. You've helped me along. You're making me strong. Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Woo!